finals countdown. So this is an event hosted by the Net College Learning Center, where we host, presentations, workshops, and events that are relative to students' courses to help you guys prepare for your finals, right? So today's session is actually a writing one. So we'll be looking at how to deconstruct a writing prompt and look at it in a really different way, basically. So again, before we even begin, my name is Kwana Yazi. I am originally from Rock Point, Arizona, and I'm one of the professional writing tutors here at the Net College. I am a part of the Taylor main campus. So yeah. And today we actually have a presentation, like I said, it's on deconstructing the prompt. And while I'm introducing myself and going through the introduction portion, I want you to sort of take out a sheet of paper, a clean sheet of paper, and then just a writing utensil if you have one. We'll be using this in the very beginning to sort of test our minds a little bit. So let me go ahead and share this screen here. So anytime you have any questions throughout this presentation, you can use the chat box. And then at the very end, we'll open it to some other questions that you may have. So we'll go ahead and get started here. So this first part, we're actually going to go through sort of like a 5-minute test. And the whole goal of this session or this portion here is to test your mind a little bit, to sort of exercise a little bit before we move into my presentation. And if you know me from our previous sessions, my previous presentations, I always like to incorporate, a very different way of instructing on these types of topics, right? So keeping your mind active and critically thinking about a lot of these topics and stuff like in a very different way from if it's either looking at the back end of it or, deconstructing it, which we're going to do today. All of that information, I like to sort of give that to you so that you understand how a lot of these topics and how everything is actually really working together in a way. So this first part, we're going to do this 5-minute test. So have a sheet of paper and a pencil out right now. So you're going to go through these questions that I'm going to ask. So on a sheet of paper, I want you to complete the following from 1 to 6. And I'll give you like about, let's say, 5 minutes, right? We'll do 5 minutes. I'll come back at 3:16. All right, we'll give it like 2 more minutes. All right, 30 more seconds. All right, so now that I've given you 5 minutes, take a look at your paper and how you literally what all the answers that you put on your sheet of paper. And I want you to compare it to what you see now on this paper that I have. You know, imagine that this is my sheet of paper. Do you have anything on your paper that looks totally different from what you see here? Anyone want to volunteer?
Yes.
What happened to yours?
All I put on there was this test is very easy. The rest I left blank.
Okay. So, okay, just the singer and group is different for Monica. So one of the things I want you to look at specifically is, you know, this is a practice of following directions, right? So when you look back at the prompt, one of the main things that I was trying to, you know, get you guys to accidentally get mistaken was the, you know, placement of certain things. So if you were to look at the instructions going back, going to number 2, right? I said to write the answer of the following it should be placed directly under the day, but not necessarily the date, right? So that's one of the things that I wanted to sort of trick you guys into, you know, misplacing some things, right? And so some person put the singer above the group, okay? And then 1023 under the date, but everything is the same though, okay? Yeah, so, you know, the most important thing about this test, this 5-minute test is that, you know, it's important to follow directions, and we're gonna be, through this whole entire presentation, we're gonna be deconstructing that prompt and looking at it from certain views, you know, incorporating some theories, incorporating some learning objectives that you can take with yourself in your own writing that you can actually critically think about in the future. So this next one is kind of like the same thing. It's like a teaser. We're going to look at these 4 questions that I'm going to put up on the screen. So try to answer the following question, not question, but using the set of rules to the right. And the rules are going to be the same throughout these 4 questions. So the left is going to be changing throughout this little part of the presentation. So the rules in this portion here is remembering that regular or warehouse storage should be used for items that do not need special handling. Special storage should be used for items that need special handling. Warehouse storage should be used for items weighing over 200 pounds. Regular storage should be used for items weighing less than 200 pounds. Special storage should always be used for storing hazardous materials. So if we were to look at this question, what type of storage would be used for equipment weighing 350 pounds? Just off the back of your head. Special, warehouse, or regular? B, we have some B's coming in. All right, So the answer to this one is warehouse, because logically, when we look at the rules on the right, you know, equipment that's weighing over 350, right? We should use the warehouse as storage, right? So then let's take a look at this next question. What type of storage would be used for a 50-pound box of dynamite? Special, warehouse, or regular storage? A, B, or C? All right, so yeah, we're getting there. So everyone is answering A. So A is the correct answer here because we're taking into consideration the writing prompt, right? Because when we look at the word, we're kind of, sometimes we'll get confused with 50 pounds, which will automatically, you know, categorize it to regular storage, right? But we're looking at dynamite, which, you know, is hazardous, so we need special storage for it, right? Next one, what type of storage would be used for a truck? Used for parts? So we have a C, a regular storage. We have C again. All right, we have some C's coming in. So what made you choose C? Right? So logically thinking, you know, since there's no poundage attached to this question, a truck specifically, right? We just know logically, if you attended my session yesterday about coherency and being logic and stuff like that, right? Logically thinking, a truck, right, would weigh over 200 pounds, so we use regular. Considering again, Kay Todaching is actually thinking in a different way, right? She's critically thinking about this situation with the writing prompt, right? And that's literally what we're going to be learning about through this presentation, is taking into consideration different perspectives, right? So A, we would just think about it, right? Just think about it. What is in that truck? So those kind of things is what we'll be covering as well. So the answer would be B on this one, just to, you know, it weighs over 200 pounds. And then this one, what type of storage would be used for machinery weighing 200 pounds? What do you guys think? So I personally believe this one actually really doesn't have enough information for us to answer it, because we were given these set of rules, right, that we need to follow basically. But considering those rules, a lot of it is conflicting against one another, right? So we can't really categorize it specifically. Kay Torching actually has a really good one, like, you know, 200 plus is packaging puts over 200. You know, wording is really crucial here. We don't say weighing, you know, 200 equal to or over, right? So that kind of phrases, those kind of keywords are important. So we, in my opinion, we wouldn't actually categorize it anywhere. So you know, this is sort of like the same thing when it kind of gets you thinking about the actual description of you to write these essays and stuff like that. So when we take a look at, you know, a writing prompt given by your instructor, you know, we often always, you know, default to, like, you know, we sort of change our mind of thinking, basically. We kind of, sometimes we get like anxiety, you know, we sort of get so discouraged about what the writing prompt's actually saying, right? So, you know, just looking at this example of this prompt here that I have on the screen, what could be your potential answer to this statement? You know, what do you think about this statement? So describe, analyze, and tell us about a time where you challenge your pre-existing worldview. Why, how would you do this again? So what's happening with this example prompt is that there's too much information that it's requiring of us to actually answer it. And I tricked you guys into actually coming up with this prompt because there's so many different variables and so many different elements that it actually needs to answer something. Rarely you'll see a prompt like this that has so many demands of you to actually answer something. So, what this whole idea of what we're going to jump into is part of this theory. And I don't know if any of you have ever heard of it, and it's called Bloom's taxonomy. Has anyone heard of Bloom's taxonomy? Yeah, you might have not really heard of it because this is what, instructors, teachers basically use to provide assignments for, students. So I'm actually going to show you the back end of it so that you guys understand what the instructors want from your assignments and what they want when you're going to be answering those assignments, right? So Bloom's taxonomy it's a model basically that outlines learning objectives that should be answered by students, right? So Bloom's taxonomy was actually created by Benjamin Bloom in 1656. So we'll be taking a look at this. And a more visual look at Bloom's taxonomy, we can take a look at this graph here. So what's happening with this graph is that, teachers and instructors, they are given this sort of paradigm that you see on the screen. And the goals of this paradigm are outlined here: to create, to evaluate, analyze, apply, understand, and remember. That's their goal for students when they give you assignments, right? This is what they want from you specifically, is to master all of these levels of this Bloom's taxonomy, right? And a lot of this information here is just basically measuring and, playing with your train of thought, looking at how your cognitive skills are, how you process information, how you critically think about information. It's basically how your brain works. They're testing how your brain works and how your brain thinks, right? From an instructor's perspective, they're giving you all these assignments. So that Bloom's taxonomy graph that you see here, this model, it can be leveled into, categorized into higher order of learning and lower order of thinking. So think of it as like the top portion at the very tip of the pyramid. You are required a lot more brain activity, a lot more thinking, a lot more effort to actually accomplish those goals. But at the very bottom, you don't really need a lot of your brain's cognitive skills to master those levels, right? So we'll be looking at these portions here, probably closer to the end. But to master, deconstructing the prompt, which is what we're going to look at, is deconstructing the prompt. We'll take a look at the specifics first, like that literal stuff, and then we'll move back into Bloom's taxonomy. So deconstructing the prompt, there's usually 3 parts that consist of a prompt. And in order for a prompt to be successful, when you are given a prompt, you have to have some sort of context. So this can be like, an article or, a short story, a passage, basically. This is the information that you need to know to understand how to start thinking about new information and stuff like that. So context is important. And then another part is explicit direction. What is actually stated within the prompt itself. Just reading it, the stated version is actually there. What is it telling you to do, right? And then implicit directions, which is sort of like an invisible prompt. Even though it's stated here, what does my instructor want me to actually answer within the prompt itself? What is he leaving out that he is implying, right? Implicit. So these 3 parts is what makes up a prompt. And if one is missing, we usually, the prompt is not actually going to work and you actually making an effort to answer it. So taking a more visual view of these 3 things, let's say we have this prompt here. There has been ongoing debate about the use of Navajo traditional art in tattoo designs in the 21st century and how people should teach Navajo taboos to younger generations. The common core beliefs of the Navajo people address the concerns that over the years, people's knowledge of taboo-related topics of the Navajo tribe have declined while the effort of cultural revitalization have not changed. What does it mean to teach taboo to younger generations in the 21st century? So I came up with this idea literally like an hour ago. I changed my prompt because earlier today, I was going through Facebook, just to generate ideas, and I actually saw this just literally like today. And, there's a whole discussion happening about tattoos and stuff like that from Native American art that are happening, right? And I personally actually do have a tattoo here. It's a really small one, but, I have my own views and stuff like that. But, I wanted to sort of come up with the prompt that was relative to this it's actually trending right now on Facebook. But just to show you guys that really quickly, that's where I came up with this prompt. But, coming back to those three parts, again, right, you need context, which you'll see here. Context, which is the actual topic or a passage or something like that, a topic. You need the context in order for you to start generating new information to create, right, which is that first step of Bloom's taxonomy. And then the explicit direction in this case is the actual prompt, right? The question that's being asked. What does it mean to teach taboo to younger generations in the 21st century? I can literally, just looking at this explicit direction portion, I can take a look at, literally just answering it. What does it mean to teach taboo, right? In my own words. But if we were to add implicit directions to this prompt here, we can say like, what implications are involved with the prompt, right? It's not stated, but we can imply in the back of our mind that the instructor wants this answered instead. So what implications are involved with the prompt? An example could be, I could discuss differences of older versus younger context. What does teaching mean in the present? This comes back to questions of definition of the research process, right? Always questioning things in the back of your mind when you're doing any type of research. Questions of definition is part of that. So you're actually telling people the definitions of certain terms. So in this example, I'm sort of like defining what it means to teach versus like now versus like back in the day. There's different types of teaching that have occurred in both eras, right? So you need these three parts. A prompt needs these three parts when it is given to you. So try to identify if a prompt that's given to you has all of these three things. The implicit is more of your own work, so it's more of you actually critically thinking about it. So coming back to this, when you're looking at a prompt, make sure it has context. Make sure you're looking at it with explicit directions, which is the actual stated prompt, and then start to think about it in the back end, the implicit direction. What is it actually being, what is implied basically? So when we look at this example of a prompt here, write an analysis about how the article, Early American versus Generational Tattooing, demonstrates the destruction of Native American culture and heritage. Use evidence from the text to explain. So right off the bat, what strikes you most, as a student if you were given this prompt? What is your goal here that you know? You can use the chat box if you want. So, you can take like, let's look at, starting to deconstruct this prompt. Our overall goal here, right, just by looking at it, is that we want literally to write an analysis, right? And then it's going to be centered around this article. But what we want to focus on when we're deconstructing a prompt is looking for keywords. And it can be a verb or it can be basically anything. So we have this analysis, and then we have, like demonstrates, right? And then we have destruction. Maybe these can be keywords that we can highlight. Native American culture and heritage are big things. It says to use evidence from the text to explain. You know, when you get a prompt, try to actually do what you see here, like underline or highlight if you need to. Before we even start anything at all, try to underline or circle any keywords you see in there. So the keywords here are like analysis, Native American culture and heritage, use evidence to explain. You know, just underlining and highlighting these types of words can actually help you to begin critically thinking about information. You know, if you see a word there that you don't understand, you can take that word and start researching about the word to understand its meaning and stuff like that, right? There's no shame in not understanding any word. You can literally create new information from just looking online at a dictionary or anything like that. You know, it helps you generate even more connections and more idea to information that you'll be processing. So that's the whole goal of writing is, you know, critically thinking and taking into perspective of different areas that you generally don't default to, right? So it's this never-ending process of processing information and how you can synthesize all of that information. So when you're looking at this, the key thing here is to actually just look at it, underline, highlight words that you don't understand immediately, and so forth, right? So we have Kei Toichi saying, my brain rewrites the prompt in a simple way. What is Native American culture? And then evaluate how the article relates to them in destructive ways. Yes, so that's also another key. So looking at it entire differently way that you can understand, right? That's the same concept as paraphrasing, you know, learning about it and trying to reword it to how you can understand it in your own words. So if you were to look at this again, just the same thing as I did, right? Write analysis and stuff like that. You know, some key areas to look out for when you're deconstructing the prompt is to look for verbs. So in this case, we have demonstrates, and then we have explain. So these are two types of verbs that are present in this writing prompt. So verbs are a key thing, write that down, thinking verbs. And then we have what we call keywords that are not verbs. So destruction, Native American culture and heritage, these are sort of like topics that are being discussed within the prompt itself. So in this case, we have destruction can be something that we can focus on, Native American culture and heritage. So these are your topic places, topic choices. And then the last one is looking at modes or formats, right? So in this case, our paper is going to be an analysis. So what does that analysis mean? How can I start to synthesize that information or process that information, right? And then what kind of formats or any specifications that we can use, like evidence, which in this case is telling us to use evidence, right? So mode or format. And these three things here are an example of what another method of teaching, you know, in deconstructing the prompt specifically is it's called the rafts and ramps method. So what this rafts and ramps method, what they literally spell, the acronym is, the R is for role, the A is for audience, audience, the M is for format and modes, the T is for task, the P is for purpose, and then the S is for strong words, or we can say keywords if we want, but that's what those portions mean there. So rafts and ramps method. So within the R portion, you want to take into consideration, you know, what role do you take as a writer? Are you a student? Are you a citizen? Are you going to be expert within this paper? And who is your audience? Is it for your peers, for your instructor? You know, and this opens a whole new portion of, you know, considering tone and mood, which we have covered in the previous sessions, right? The finding a voice portion. So I'm not going to go deep into these little parts, but just telling you what to look out for when you're going to be deconstructing the prompt. So who's your audience? Peers, parents, instructors. and then what kind of response is required. In this case, essay analysis, literary review, rhetorical analysis, all of those different types of papers will be here. And what are the verbs in the prompt asking you to do? Discuss, analyze, synthesize. There's a whole thousands of different verbs that can be present within a writing prompt. And then what are some keywords that you need to include? And the good thing, a tip here with this portion is those keywords that we underline, right? Destruction, Native American culture, and heritage. We can use those words within our thesis statement to strengthen that thesis statement because that becomes a topic of itself. So keywords are strong, are strong words that can be used within a thesis statement. So from this portion here, the rafts and the ramps method, we're going to be focusing on mostly the TP portion. So, looking at verbs specifically, which I wanted to cover in this presentation specifically. And, this is where we come back to Bloom's taxonomy. Because, a part of this Bloom's taxonomy paradigm, those are core elements, right? Those core levels. You have like create, analyze, and stuff like all the way through. Each level right there has its own learning objectives for students to actually, come up with their own ideas and stuff like that within their writing. So there's learning objectives attached to each level, and that's what we'll look at. And there'll be verbs there to look at that will be relative to each level. So that's what we're going to be doing. So these are Bloom's taxonomy of measurable verbs, which we can rename as, thinking verbs, or some say like signal words. Power words is a good one too that they use a lot as well. So those types of verbs that actually tell us what to do, right? Those are what we're going to be looking at. So the first level is creating. So within the creating stage of Bloom's taxonomy, right, which is the highest order of cognitive thinking, right? We're using basically all of our brain power to create things, right? And some key verbs that to look out for here is design, formulate, build, invent, create, compose, generate, derive, modify, develop. So anything that is relative to creating something new ideas, something innovative, right? So anytime you see a keyword, one of these key verbs, you're basically being asked to create something new that that you'll be using a lot of your cognitive thinking at the highest order, right? And an example learning objective here, and this is from the instructor's view. So they're saying like, I'm going to use these key verbs to, allow the student to be able to understand the creating portion. So the student will be able to, design an original solution to address the ongoing debate about tattoos and Native American art. So this is in their own mind. They're thinking this as instructors. They're saying my students I want them to learn this, so I'm going to use these key verbs to allow them to create something new, right? So that's what's happening with the creating portion. So remember those types of key verbs that you see. And then for the next one, evaluating. Here, again, we're examining information and we're making judgments. So choose, support, relate, determine, defend, argue, support, convince, select, evaluate. So here we're taking consideration of other people. So what do you think other people will say in your paper, right? You're taking into consideration their perspective. Now you have to involve them in your paper so that, if you were to defend this paper, you would be automatically ready to, take on any answers, any questions that people may have. So, you're looking at another perspective, basically. You're examining the information. So the example learning objective here is that the student will be able to determine whether using Native American art in tattoos would be appropriate using multiple perspectives. So the instructor wants you to, evaluate all of the things that have been put on the table. Now look at it. Who has objections? Is there consequences to it maybe and stuff like that, right? So that's the evaluating portion. Then analyzing here, the third one, here's where we're taking it apart and we're identifying connections to other ideas and information. So we're synthesizing, right? And stuff like that, putting together a lot of information to make sense of something. So we're classifying, breaking down, categorizing, and analyzing, illustrating to make a point, criticizing, simplifying, associate. So a lot of it's breaking it down, basically, deconstructing it and looking at it from views of other people as well. So the example learning objective here is that the student will be able to differentiate generational thinking among Native American people in past and present time. So in this example, coming back to our topic here is the Native American art within tattoos, right, as tattoos. So, in this stage, we're asking where we want the student to, analyze the information about how people think from different generations about, back in the day or now in present time. Is their thinking a little bit different now to accept that kind of thing within this day, right? So that's what we're analyzing now. That's an example of what your instructor wants you to do, is to analyze that information. And the fourth one is applying. So key verbs here: calculate, predict, apply, solve, illustrate, use, demonstrate, determine, model, perform, present, etc. So you're using the information, in a new situation that you see. So you're actually applying it to your own personal knowledge, or, just like applied sciences, you're applying it to research and stuff like that, right? You're actually putting it into action. So the student will be able to apply personal connections, knowledge, thought about Native American art and tattoos. So that's the overall goal from an instructor's perspective. And then understanding, here as you can see we started from the very top, right? Using high order thinking, you can tell that we're using a lot of our brain to, create it and then analyze it and evaluate it and stuff like that. We're actually thinking about it. But now we know about it, now we're applying it, and now we just understand it like from the back of our mind. So there's not really a lot of thinking there because we already know it, right? So here, describe, explain, paraphrase, restate, give original examples of, summarize, contrast, interpret, and so forth. So the example learning objective here is that the student will be able to describe the topic in his, her, their own words. So right now, we're at a stage where you understand everything. You understand all the information you just talked about. You took into consideration both perspectives of different people. You analyze what could happen, what are the consequences, what are policies and stuff like that, right? You understand all of that information now, which is this level here, understanding. So after you understand it, we go to the lowest order of thinking, which is remembering. So now we just remember it. We put it in the back of our mind, and we can recall this information immediately, right? If someone were to ask us, or someone were to have a discussion about it, we'd be automatically, not informed, but we'll be automatically like engaged with the topic. So, list, recall, outline, define, name, match, quote, recall, identify, label, recognize, etc. Those are the type of key verbs to look out for. There's a whole bunch of other verbs as well. So an example learning objective here is that the student will be able to make legitimate argument through memorization about Native American art and tattoos and how that conflict is happening, right? Just as I said, you now remember, you discuss, you applied everything, grading, evaluate, analyzing, applying, and understanding. You already know it. Now we can just remember it. And if someone were to ask us about it, we would automatically know the answer of our opinion and stuff like that, right? So, this process is literally how instructors and professors, teachers, educators, basically, this is what they use to construct and develop these writing assignments. And their overall goal here is to actually get you to do these, to master these levels of thinking, right? Cognitive thinking, from the highest order all the way to the lowest order. So when the next time you sort of get a new prompt or writing prompt or any type of writing assignment, you want to take into consideration these levels. They're already taking into consideration these levels. They see it this way, but now as a student, you know, I'm giving you a heads up now, like you should now have like a first step, like you're ahead of them, basically. That's what I wanted to let you guys know about with this presentation, you know, looking at it at the back end of how instructors are actually teaching you all of this information. So the overall goal of, you know, the key to instructing is this Bloom's taxonomy theory. So Bloom's taxonomy, I would, you know, encourage you guys to look that up because it really is interesting. Bloom's taxonomy from Benjamin Bloom in, I believe it's 1656. But, you know, a lot of this information is relative to, you know, Navajo way of thinking, right? From the top to the bottom. This is in a pyramid, but when we look at it, let's go back to this slide here so that we see the whole triangle. But, you know, if you were to put this in Navajo perspective, we always start with, you know, right? Within any kind of educational model, like thinking, and you're thinking, then you plan it, then you put it into life, and then you evaluate it again, right? Same thing here, when you're looking at this, the thinking stage is up here, right? Because we're thinking a lot and stuff like that. And analyzing here, this portion somewhere like around here, we're actually planning the information, how we can use it, taking into perspective other people's you know, objections or their opinions and stuff like that, right? We're analyzing the entire situation. And then we go into applying it, right? Putting into life, applying it to ourselves and everything relative to it. And then going into evaluation, which we come back to evaluating how we understood the information. And if we don't understand the information, remember, we always have to start back at one, redo the whole process and stuff like that. And this is part of the same thing as the research process that I always come back to, is that anytime you have a breakage or, you know, a missing connection between your research or any type of educational or academic thing that you do, try to use paradigms and models of the maybe if you're Navajo, or of, you know, any other models that you can find. And when you actually evaluate and analyze those models, those paradigms, they're actually pretty much true. So anytime you break a linkage, it's always good to start back to the very top. And then it's this never-ending cycle that keeps going around and around and around, right? And that's ours, right? Our paradigm is in a circle, and everything is like a circular motion and stuff like that. So yeah, I wanted to go through that portion there, and we'll go ahead and open it up for any questions that anyone may have for me. But yeah, that's the end of my presentation. So hopefully the information I provided was informative enough for you to, you know, like when you're given an assignment, you'll think like, oh, hey, this is what my instructor wants me to do. So if he wants me to like create this plan or, you know, analyze the information, you know, what keywords can I use in my prompt or within my assignment, right? What can I look for in my prompt that I can use to an advantage of myself within my writing assignments, right? So yeah, that's my presentation for today. Does anyone have any questions? Or is everyone like mind blown? Because sometimes these models can be really mind blowing and explosive with information that I'd never actually really thought about and stuff like that. And you know, like I said, I wanted to tell you guys about the back end of it, just so you guys understand what is required of your writing assignments and stuff like that, what they want you to actually think about. And, you know, it's always good to be open-minded, which is the goal within every writing assignment, is to be open-minded. You don't want to just be straightforward and not necessarily, you know, be set with some kind of opinion or purpose or a claim that you have. You want to take into consideration other areas, right? And stuff like that. So yeah. I'll go ahead and leave it on. That one. So does anyone have any questions? The recordings of these videos they're being automatically posted on, not automatically, but we have to edit them. But I've been posting them immediately after each session. I haven't posted this morning's or yesterday's sessions yet because I haven't had time to. But these recordings are being posted to the Net College Learning Center YouTube page. So if you go to YouTube, let me just put it, when you go to YouTube, just type in the Net College Learning Center. So go to YouTube, that's our studio, but just go to YouTube and then go to the search bar and just put the Net College Learning Center. We should pop up here. Then just click us, and then all of our videos are here. So these are all the ones that have been posted. This one was yesterday's sessions. I haven't posted today's sessions yet, but you can also find it on Facebook. Since we're recording live on Facebook, they're immediately available right away after we end here. So Facebook as well. So I believe that one's under Saley, or the Net College Saley Learning Center. That one's a little bit different. But YouTube is where we're posting everything for finals countdown. So as you guys can see, Audrey actually posted the evaluation form. So again, those are crucial to, for your participation points towards that gift card giveaway, right? So all the information that we need is in the evaluation. If you attend 5 events, you get entered for a chance to win some gift cards and stuff like that. All that information is in the chat box. But does anyone have any other questions? I believe we won't be starting back up until tomorrow. We have quadratic equations, which I will be doing in the morning at 10 o'clock. And then we have some other sessions as well that will be happening. In terms of writing, at 3 o'clock again tomorrow, I'll be doing the rhetorical triangle and speech composition. So taking a look at the rhetorical triangle itself, looking at concepts of ethos, pathos, and logos. So I'll be doing that as well tomorrow, but dclearningcenter.com is where you can find all of the information. Cool. All right. So if anyone doesn't have any other questions, feel free to fill out the evaluation. Then just make sure you get the link at least opened in your browser. And then that way you won't lose it or anything like that. Yeah. So if anyone doesn't have any other questions, we'll go ahead and end it at that for today. I really appreciate everyone's participation today for this session. This was actually a really fun presentation for me because, when I was creating it, I was thinking about a lot of things while I was creating it. It's always fun to look at these types of models and looking at it a really different way, a different perspective, basically. So yeah. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I look forward to seeing you guys at our next events. Biga. See you guys. Have a great afternoon. Have a great evening, and I shall see you guys tomorrow.